First, let me compliment Senator Harkin for his incredible leadership in bringing to the attention of this body something I think everyone understands, and that is the procedures of the United States Senate, the way it's operating today. There's a problem. There's a very serious problem. All you need to do is turn on C-SPAN and see the Senate in a quorum call for hours to know that there's a better way for us to operate the United States Senate. All you have to do is look at a week that goes by where there's very few recorded votes to know that there's opportunity for debate and action that's being lost in the United States Senate. We can do better. And the procedures that we're following today, the way that it's being honored by the members of the Senate, we need to change the rules and procedures of the United States Senate. And I want to thank the Majority Leader and the Republican Leader on negotiating and getting together to understand the frustrations that are out there in both of our caucuses and to try to come up with reasonable changes in our rules. I see Senator McCain is on the floor, and I acknowledge his leadership with Senator Levin. I was honored to work with that group along with Senator Pryor and Senator Schumer, with Senator Barrasso, Senator Alexander, and our former colleague, Senator Kyle. And we sat for hours debating. It was very educational for me, Mr. President, because I listened to the concerns of my Republican colleagues. And it was a lot different than what I heard in the Democratic caucus. And I think we both learned a lot from each other, but there was general agreement that there was a real problem in the operations of the United States Senate, and that we owed an obligation to take a look at our rules and see whether we couldn't modify the rules so that we can do the type of deliberation, debate, and voting that's expected of the United States Senate. One of the problems that became very apparent to all of us is that individual senators are able to block the consideration of amendments and bills on the floor of the Senate indefinitely, and that's wrong. My colleague from Arizona pointed out that you could be in your home state and offer an objection, and a bill could be brought to a standstill. That's not how the Senate should operate. We should be able to consider legislation, and individual senators shouldn't be able to block the consideration of legislation. I could give you hundreds of bills that have been reported out of our committees in the United States Senate that have never reached the floor of the Senate. And quite frankly, the reason is that an individual senator has blocked the consideration, and it would take the Majority Leader too much time to go through cloture motions in order to bring those issues to the floor of the Senate. We also have seen an abuse on the 60-vote threshold. The 60-vote threshold shouldn't be the standard working majority of the Senate. Simple majority should control our actions. And yet, in too many cases, we've used the 60-vote threshold in order to move legislation forward. We've also seen it very difficult to bring amendments up for consideration. It's been very difficult to get action on individual amendments on the floor of the Senate. So we need to change the way we do our procedures. We need to be the great deliberative body, which historically the United States Senate has done. I want to compliment many of my colleagues. I've already mentioned the group that worked on some suggested rules changes and made those recommendations to the Majority Leader and the Republican Leader. I also want to thank my colleague, Senator Harkin, who just spoke, for his leadership on this issue, Senator Merkley and Senator Tom Udall, who have been leaders on this. We have brought this to the attention not only of our colleagues, but to the American people, and they expect us to take action to improve the operations of the United States Senate. So let me just talk a moment on the negotiated agreement between the Democratic leader and the Republican leader, between the Majority Leader and the Minority Leader, as to what I understand will be recommended to us very briefly, very shortly, and I hope we can act on it as early as this evening. First, one of the frustrations is that we have it difficult to bring a bill to the floor of the Senate. It's the motion to proceed. And the threat of a filibuster on the motion to proceed has denied the opportunity for us to even start debating an issue. Well, under the agreement that I expect will be brought forward, the Majority Leader will have 2 additional opportunities to start debate on an issue. First, if the Republican leader is in agreement, they can bring that bill to the floor immediately without any preconditions. That could particularly work well on institutional issues that need to be dealt with, such as appropriation bills, so that we can get onto appropriation bills a lot sooner than we can today. But then there's another opportunity, that the majority leader could bring a bill to the floor without the fear of a filibuster, without having to file cloture, by offering amendments, that there would be a guaranteed right to offer up to 4 amendments, 2 by the minority, 2 by the majority. That gets us started on legislation. It's very interesting, if you look at the process that's been used, where bills come to the floor, and we're the most pleased by the way the process has worked. If you look at the National Defense Authorization Act, you look at postal reform, you look at the agricultural bill in the 112th Congress, in each of those cases, the committees voted on the bills, they came to the floor with the managers, we started on the bill, and we completed the bill. And I think we're all pretty proud by the manner in which those issues were handled on the floor of the United States Senate. Well, under this process, the majority leader can get us started. The managers can get us started on legislation. And once we start on legislation, once we start debating the issues, then we can see what amendments are out there. We can try to manage the time appropriately, and we can get actual action and debate and votes on the floor of the Senate on amendments and on the final passage. I really do think this empowers our committees. You know, we all spend a lot of time in our committees. We're there for the hearings. We want to see committee markups. But we also like to see the products that we come up in the committee being the major work on the floor of the United States Senate. Well, now, with the use of this ability of the leader to bring forward a bill that's come out of our committee products will be more respected, that we'll have a better legislative process because we're using the products that come out of our committee. We're respecting the work of our committee. We reward our chairman and ranking member working together, bringing legislation to the floor of the United States Senate. So I think that's a real major improvement and something that really will allow the Senate to operate in the way that it should. We also allow for conference committees to be formed in a more expedited way. Right now, it could take 3 cloture votes to get into conference. So we contract that into 1. I think that's going to be the recommendation. I had the honor in the 112th Congress to serve on a conference committee that dealt with the payroll tax extension. We worked, got our work done, brought a bill to the floor of the Senate and House, and got it enacted into law, because we were able, in a very open, transparent way, to work with our colleagues in the other body, resolve our differences, and bring legislation forward. I might be wrong, but I think that was the only conference committee that operated in the 112th Congress. There haven't been many. And I think most members of this body would be hard-pressed to remember when they last served on a conference committee. And yet we know there are significant differences between the products that come out of this body and the products that come out of the other body. We need to reconcile those differences. Being able to go into conference allows us the opportunity to let the legislative process work the way that it should. One of the procedures that the majority leader is going to talk about is that once cloture is invoked, if you have to use cloture, well, you have 30 hours. But you don't guarantee 30 hours. That 30 hours is the maximum. Each member is entitled to only 1 hour to speak. And a quorum call during post-cloture can be considered dilatory if we've already established a quorum. And the majority leader is going to talk, and the minority leader is going to talk about the fact that post-cloture, if you want to speak, come to the floor and speak. If you don't, the motion should be, the presiding officer should put the issue to the membership for vote, so that we can expedite issues and not waste a full day letting the 30 hours expire. There will also be recommendations to deal with nominations. I tell you, we're extremely frustrated. I served on the Judiciary Committee. I've had the opportunity to recommend to the President several appointments to the federal bench. It took months for these non-controversial nominees to be approved on the floor of the United States Senate. It really affects our ability to recruit the very best to serve on our courts. The same thing's true with the President on his team to have in place. And there will be recommendations to shorten the post-cloture time, if a cloture vote is needed, on judicial nominations to, I think, 2 hours, and sub-cabinet appointments to around 8 hours. that allows the leader to be able to bring these issues to the floor without the threat that it would tie us up for weeks to take up just a couple of appointments. These are all major improvements. Now, let me make it clear. If I were writing the rules of the United States Senate, I would go a lot further. I'm one of those, and I know I might be in the minority in this body. I happen to believe in majority rule. I happen to believe that majorities should make the decisions. I think there should be adequate time for debate, et cetera. The Senate's different than the House. I accept that. But at the end of the day, I'm in favor of majority rule. But I'm also in favor of trying to get our rules done in a bipartisan manner because, quite frankly, the Democrats may not be in the majority forever. If you look at the last since 1981 through the end of this Congress, but for Senator Jeffers' decision in May of 2001 to become an independent and caucus with the Democrats, the Senate would have been divided as follows: 16 years under Democratic control, 16 years under Republican control, and 2 years split 50-50. So I think it's very important that we all understand that these rules need to work regardless of which party is in the majority. And that's why it's the right thing to do to negotiate between the Democrats and Republicans rules that can withstand the test of time and be fair to both the majority and the minority. So once again, I would have majority rule. That's what I believe. And I know there'll be a chance to vote on that, and that's how I'll express my votes. But I do believe it's best for us to work together, Democrats and Republicans, and come together with a true compromise on the rules changes. I think that's exactly what Leader Reid and Leader McConnell has done. They've taken the recommendations of many of us. They've listened to a lot of us. They've listened to both caucuses. And they'll come forward with recommendations that really will allow this body to carry out its responsibility in a more effective way, in a way that's better understandable to the American people, where we really can get on legislation a lot sooner, debate issues a lot quicker, take up amendments and actually vote on amendments, and be able to move legislation that comes out of our committee, approve nominations in a much more efficient way. To me, that gives us the opportunity for a new start in the United States Senate as we start the 113th Congress. Let's hope that the cooperation that we see developing on the changes of the rules will allow us to work together to deal with the problems of the nation in a more collegial way, recognizing that compromise is how this country was formed, listen to each other, and move legislation in the best traditions of the United States Senate. With that, Mr. President, I would yield the floor.